And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pumpkin Copter Cast, a good old podcast about video games. Today, I am joined by Zac Pierce, one of the people behind upcoming party game Bombfest.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. So we'll start with the basic: who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Zac Pierce, lead developer of Bombfest. I'm a teacher in the morning. In the afternoons, I'm usually streaming on Twitch, and at night, I usually sleep. And any other time in between, I'm working on video games like Bombfest, side projects, or whatever seems to strike my fancy at the time.
Okay. So, what was your favorite game and/or games growing up?
Let's see. I grew up with, I want to say that I grew up with a SNES. So we had games like Zelda, we had Gradius, we had a few others that their name escaped me. And that were really my first few games there. But StarCraft had to be the first game that truly gripped me, and I would call it my first game. I spent so many hours trying to play that game, which I was no good at, and making worlds with Blizzard's world editor
Mm-hmm.
that came with every copy of StarCraft. From there, it was games like Halo Combat Evolved for PC, and eventually in high school, I got my hands on the Orange Box by Valve, which included Team Fortress 2. I've invested over 1,100 hours in that game, and I probably should have done anything but that. And that's what I enjoyed growing up.
Okay. So, what made you want to get into game design?
Hmm. Ever since I was a kid, I really enjoyed making games. I used to play a lot with wooden train tracks. I played with plastic marble works, just these little chutes and ladders for not ladders. Marbles don't go up ladders. Chutes that marbles would spiral down and follow a set path. And I really loved designing stuff like that. I loved creating experiences. And back then it was for trains and marbles, and these days it's more so for people when playing games together. And that passion only grew as I grew up. Like I mentioned with StarCraft, I enjoyed making worlds there. I built levels in Hammer for Team Fortress 2. I picked up, let's see, I want to say it was HTML first. So you don't really make games for websites, but I picked up Flash animation and in college began formal studies into programming, which allowed me to make games in JavaScript, in Unity, and in Unreal Engine. So it just kind of progressed ever since I was a little kid when it comes to designing games. I can look back and say, you know what? I've kind of always been doing this, haven't I? And that's kind of a funny thought, but I guess it's just who I was.
Okay. So now we can get into the meat and taters of this. So,
Mm.
if you were at PAX or a similar convention and someone wandered up to your booth, what would be the rundown you'd give them about what Bombfest is?
Let's see. We'll see if I can remember it all right now. Uh, so Bombfest is a game about blocks and bombs. It's a chaotic physics-based party game. It's like sumo wrestling with explosives. Hop in, control a wooden block character, pick up bombs, throw them, trying not to walk into them after you've thrown them. Look out for chain reactions and try to blow away the competition. That's Bombfest.
Okay, then. So, what made you want to make it into a party style game?
Hmm. That's I don't even know if I got the best answer for that, but something that I've always thought about when it comes to making video games is I want video games that bring people together. I want to make sure that if I'm making something, whether it's games, whether it's art, whether it's, I don't know, just a lesson I'm teaching at a school, that it's encouraging people to create and it's encouraging people to come together. I think everybody's been blessed with different gifts and abilities, and that we use those things to bring honor to each other, love each other, and share that love. And one of the best ways to do that is, I want to say, games where you're sitting next to your friend on the couch, and when they win, you can get upset with them, and when they win, they can get upset with you, but you're still sitting there playing games together. So a party game like that, where encourages just having friends over and having a good time, I think perfectly encapsulates that idea of just being able to use gifts and abilities to bless each other.
Okay, so the main shtick of the game is that all the players are little wooden peggle people who grab and throw bombs at the competition. Now, where did like the visual style and like the gameplay come from? Or did you have it as a prior idea, or is it something you came up with when you actually started developing it?
So, Bombfest was originally a game called Well Wishes. It was a 4-player top-down adventure game where each character controlled a different class, something like a trine or a gauntlet, but more class-based. And so someone's the wizard, and someone's the knight, and someone's the ranger, and you can use them to solve puzzles. And only later in development did the physics element come in. It used to be you beat up people with a sword or a bow and arrow till they died. And at some point, I said, I don't want to make my game about blood and death. I want to make it about something that's even more kid friendly and more accessible to other audiences. So we said, what if you just push things off the table? And then it's just physics based at that point. And from there, I really draw on the inspiration of kindergarten, where kindergarten was a lot of building with blocks, or more importantly, knocking over other people's blocks. And back then, it was a great way not to make friends, and I severely regret that in some cases. But nowadays, I can have the computer build a tower, and if I knock it over, the computer's still my friend at the end of the day, and that's awesome. So a little bit of this old project, Well Wishes, which in fact you can download the prototype for free on my itch account or on my website, because we just put it up there. We're not going to continue it, and you could also go to kindergarten if you want to experience the original inspiration for Bombfest.
So yeah, you already kind of answered the where did the visual style come from? So
I'd love to add a little bit to that,
oh,
though.
go ahead.
Our I would say a couple years into development, I was at a show in Columbus, Ohio, and I should say I, at the time, I was the only person on the team, had a very successful show. We ended up winning 3 awards for accessibility, best in show, crowd favorite, which was an incredible honor I wasn't expecting. And I got those things, and I'm sitting there saying, holy crap, this is taking off. Like, this idea might be one of my good ones like for once. And I was saying to myself, well, I don't think I can do this on my own. I need to make sure that I have the appropriate team to accomplish what this is becoming. And I asked myself, well, what would I need? And I was praying about it, and I was sitting there saying, I need a 3D artist. I checked my business cards that I collected from that weekend, and only one person gave me a business card. Our 3D artist, Marissa Hike, who joined the team and started off by making a wooden train set for the game inside the game, just like the one I grew up with, and has since then created all of our environments and the majority of the 3D models you see in the game. If it looks like a bad 3D model, it was me. And if it looks like a good one, it was her. So a lot of the design, especially the 3D, the aesthetic, like the rooms, that orthographic view, the corner of every room, was Marissa's idea and implementation. And as art director, she has taken the game to new heights through her artistic input. So a lot of that comes from her. And the rest of it is me sitting there saying, what would a kid do if they had their toys, and where would they play with them? So would they just, I don't know, sit them on top of a washing machine? Would they have them on their floor in a little play mat like in preschool? What would they do? And other than that is really just taking toys myself and putting them places and seeing where would they go. And that's kind of how the visual design for Bombfest comes about.
Oh. So while playing it at Boston Fig and while watching Jesse Cox, Gerard Khalil, the completionist, and Alex Fossiani get progressively angrier at player 4, I noticed that, there's, in addition to the regular bombs, there's also, quite a few power-ups that are unlocked the more you play it. So, how do you determine like, what type of power up makes it into the game versus one that doesn't?
Ooh, good question. I have to say, at least with the first bunch of special bombs and characters and the accessories and stages we offer for Bombfest, a lot of them either came directly from me or came from Marissa. We sat down and said, "What works? This? I'll add it today." They really kind of came out organically. Some of the more complicated things, like we have a bomb called the Button Mine, which is actually literally based on the buttons we give out at shows. And this one was the result of a competition to encourage other people to make new bombs. I had to sit down and say, what would be a perfectly simple bomb idea that I could make within a few days that would show people, hey, you can make what you want to. And oh yeah, that's a cred. I almost forgot there. Our newest bombs added to the game have all been player designed by our community. We run contests and we've offered Kickstarter rewards for community members to create their own bombs and even their own characters that we then implement into the game. Our latest one, let's see here, was a 20-sided die bomb with 20 different effects depending on where the die lands. And it's definitely been a crowd pleaser that people chase after as soon as it spawns on the field, and it was a real lot of fun to design after getting the after the contest was over. So a lot of these ideas either come off the top of my head, come from Marissa, or come from the community. So in a way, we're all helping to make the game together to be something even better than I could have done myself.
Okay, so since I know basically nothing about making games, how long did the game take to make from like idea to finished product?
Let's see. We're at about 3.5 years now, and that's just about how long it'll be before this sucker comes out. I've spent the first year and a half, about 2 years of that, working on my own. Marissa joined the team, and all throughout, we've been working with contractors who do sound effects, video editing, stop motion animations, and we also work with a publisher and a marketing team to help us wrap this goofy game up for launch.
Okay. So when is like the estimated day of release once everything's, ready to be put out into the world?
We are shooting for January 8th and January in general for the game on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo Switch. We are doing our best to hit that day with all consoles if we can, and if not, the releases will be following them very shortly because we're excited to see the game on every console we can get ourselves onto.
Okay. So yeah, that answers what platforms it'll be on. So have you or the people who have played your game expressed a desire to have it on a specific console? Do you have an idea of like which platform it might do the best on once it's released?
Oh, goodness gracious. I know I would agree with my community and the number of people who've asked for keys, and that would have to be the Nintendo Switch. We've got a colorful little game. It's physics-based, has two buttons to play. And in reality, you really only need one button and one stick to play the game well. And it's accessible for everyone. So Nintendo Switch definitely shares the target market with the game itself. And I feel like we are the best. I would say that we are a strong fit for any of the platforms, thanks to the availability of controllers and the popularity of the platforms themselves when it comes to audiences. But I'm definitely looking forward to playing it on the Switch.
Okay. Um, Uh, do you anticipate future like playthroughs between other people? Because again, I bring up the multiplayer mayhem with Jesse Cox, Gerard the Completionist, and Alex Fasciani, where they were constantly flummoxed by the shenanigans of the probably now infamous Player 4. Do you think the AI in the game act as crazy as it always had in that video?
That's a really good question because even I'm a little flummoxed by Player 4 in that video. We designed our AI in a way so that it has some guidelines. It has guidelines like, well, you want to be about a unit away from a bomb to be safe outside of the red range. And you want to hold on to it before you throw it for about 2 seconds and then throw it to be safe. And you want to target every player evenly, depending how far away they are from you. But I've introduced a factor I call the personality factor. It's a bunch of random calls on a normal distribution, so a good old bell curve that influences what these ideas the computers hold and how much they should be influenced. So sometimes the computer says, you know what, I want to stand 3 yards away from a bomb because I want to be safe. And sometimes they say, I don't care about bombs. I'm just going to walk through them to get where I want to go. And sometimes they say, player one, they need to lose. I don't care about anybody else. And really goofy stuff like that. Every time you play a match, these values are randomized again, which means every time they started a new round, player 4 was a little bit different. Sometimes they're really good and like I can't beat them. And sometimes they just walk off the edge. They don't actually do that, but they will make some goofy mistakes. And I've never seen one just walk off the edge. I've seen them do some really strange things. But you'll always fight a different computer every time a match starts. And I guess they just rolled some really vengeful player 4s over and over again. And that makes me excited because the game is all about replayability and experiencing it in new and exciting ways. And they found somehow a way to do that every round. So congrats to you, Jesse, Gerard, Alex. And I hope some other people get to experience that way. I'm looking at the Grumps. I'm looking at Stumped Gaming. And I'm really excited to see what other people have to think about Player 4.
Okay. And last on the docket is the question everyone always understands perfectly, and there's never any confusion or misinterpretation ever. So, in your opinion as a game designer, is video games?
I think they can be. I think that's probably as much as I've come to understand games, that they definitely can be. Sometimes they aren't. But in the right circumstances, they is. And the real trick is understanding when they is and when they is not. Because games, everyone has their own preferences, their own joys, their own things they love about games. Maybe it's playing with friends. Maybe it's having the top rank in Overwatch. Maybe it's just experiencing something that other people call a walking simulator. But in reality, games are. And depending on who you are and your likes and your interests are, what your likes and interests are, games might be something else. So they could be, and they might not be. But that doesn't mean that people are going to stop making games and people are going to start making games that are and the games that aren't. So in reality, I think games definitely are. And that's my best answer.
Okay, then. And, that brings us to the conclusion of this particular episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast. I would like to thank Zac Pierce for joining me today and talking to me about his upcoming game.
And hey, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be here and to get through some great questions and get to talk a little bit about my life's work.
So, yeah, there'll be, to any of the -7 people who are listening to this right now, there will be like a link to the Bombfest website so you can check it out yourself, and also be sure to include the link to the episode of Jesse Cox's Multiplayer Mayhem so that you can see the otherworldly terror that is Player 4. And, again, if any of the -12 people listening to this actually enjoyed it, feel free to like and subscribe. on those rare occasions that I post anything worth listening to, you can follow me on the Twitters at tgorman83. And Zach, before we sign off, are there any social medias you wish to plug?
Sure. The best way to connect with me is from my website, zacfierce.com. That's Zach without an H or a K. Really don't care for those letters so much. You can find me on Twitter as Zac Pierce, Instagram, same place. And if you're ever interested in game development, I perform game development live every weekday whenever my schedule doesn't change at, let's see here, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, or if you live in the UK, around 9 p.m. And you can find me on Twitch to see those streams live at Zac Fierce Guy until whoever owns Zac Fierce stops using their account and I get that name back. So please stop in. Feel free to ask questions and hang out. It's my pleasure to talk about games and to inspire those who are interested in making them or who just want to see what it's like behind the curtain.
Yeah, and with that, this has been the Pumpkin Copter Cast, a good old podcast about video games, and I will see all of you next time.
See ya.